Live everywhere on netrootsradio.com. David Waldman, Kagro, in the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hello, how you doing, everybody? It is Thursday, November 26, 2020. It might be a significant date of some kind. It is Thanksgiving Day. That's the one I'm thinking of, unless you're in Canada, in which case you're already done with this. I imagine it's Canadian Christmas or something at this point, perhaps Valentine's Day. Tend to move ahead. I don't know whether Canadians have the same retail problems that we do with the stores rushing the holidays along. I imagine the next new and exciting one means more sales for some reason, so they push us right onto that. I have noticed it as well. Other people pointing out that I guess it used to be that, well, I don't know. Maybe there was never any transitional period, and they never. It's not that they don't have Thanksgiving things in the store. It's that right after Halloween, they tend to sort of move right to Christmas. They put some Halloween or some Thanksgiving things out there because they can make a couple bucks selling them, and people need that. Decorations and of course turkeys as well, but mostly I don't know. They moved straight to the Christmas. I guess there's no Thanksgiving candy. Maybe that's the reason why it looks like that. They occupy so much space during the Halloween season, understandably, with the candy because that's the big item that they sell, and then they immediately just shift that into the new Christmas packaged candy, and I guess it's easier than rearranging the shelves. And since there's no Thanksgiving candy, if we made a tradition of handing out little chocolate turkeys, they do have them, of course, they're out there, but not nearly as big a trade as, say, red and green M&Ms or whatever else, and candy canes. And they have every flavor of candy canes out there now, so and it's an exciting time in candy cane world. Have they, I guess I could ask Bill, did they never, find a way to invent Christmas candy corn? Is that just not a thing? You just hold on to your leftover candy corn. It just remains a Halloween-themed treat no matter what time of year? I don't know. I suppose that's possible. Anyway, so yeah, we decided to keep you company today. This is normally a day whereupon, is that the word I'm looking for? Whereupon we might run a rerun or a pre-recorded show to try and keep you company. I think it's important. Well, this time especially, of course, because Trump disease, and we're all stuck at home, and a lot of people who would ordinarily perhaps be traveling and might listen to the show, stream it via, I don't know, one of the many methods that you can now stream it in your car. And I guess if you have a smartphone and you got it hooked up to your speakers, you could do it right through the Netroots Radio live stream. No reason to go elsewhere for that. And maybe stream it on your way to Thanksgiving dinner, even though it's morning. I don't know. Maybe while you're preparing to pack up the car to go. But anyway, this year you're at home. So are we. We're very frequently at home during Thanksgiving. Other people come and visit us, but we're not. I guess I won't be running around vacuuming, let's say, in preparation for all the people coming to visit. And so we thought we would do a live show for you. Greg Dworkin, I guess, also not traveling for Thanksgiving and available to join us to help round up the news. Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Bill tells us he's holding Thanksgiving for the squirrels on his porch roof. I found out this morning on Twitter. So I'm sure they're very thankful. And now you can join me and Greg as we spend Thanksgiving eating candied yams and other candy. Well, why don't they sell that? And so little representative candy yams. If they could do candy corn, they could do candy yams. And bickering about the state of things. That's the other pastime that the nation has always enjoyed. Not the Canadians. They're too polite for that sort of thing. And I guess they talk about better topics than all of that. So here comes Greg. Yeah, we can pretend that we're a dysfunctional family of some kind, perhaps. This year, well, you know what? Maybe we can be thankful for the silver lining of COVID-19, not getting large families together to yell at their relatives who might have voted for Trump or who might still believe that Trump had somehow won the election. So, I guess we got that off the table. And instead, we get to sit here on the radio and talk about the dysfunction of the rump end of the Trump administration and how they are demonstrating for all of us why, at least here in the United States, businesses escort their disgruntled former employees off the premises immediately instead of letting them hang around and administer things for another 4 months. But we used to expect more of our presidents. Now, of course, that's out the window. So, all right, let's see. We can round up any number of stories. I'm going to say 20 is a good number. That's how many messages you sent me on Skype here. Greg, good morning. How you doing?
Hi.
Happy Thanksgiving.
That's usually the case because, by the time I get to number 7, I forgot that I already sent number 1.
Yeah, but, you have to send it to me again.
We don't have to tell people that.
Where's your thing on the list? I'll send it again so you can find it.
I'll just put it at the bottom here so you can find it.
Okay, so what's new?
Some things are normal. It's normal/not normal. For example, it's 9 o'clock on Thursday, Turkey Day, and that means it's time for the 94th annual New York City Macy's Day Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Aha.
Now that's important because at the end of it, Santa Claus comes, and then he's escorted into Macy's, and then Christmas season starts. So there's no Thanksgiving candy because when you're celebrating Thanksgiving, it's like an automatic tie-in into Christmas.
True. Yes. That's the traditional start of the season. That and standing in line for consumer goods.
Yeah, that and the Redskins-Cowboys game, except they're not the Redskins anymore.
Right, yes. We got rid of that, and now we all get to enjoy
and now all we have
Washington
to do is get rid of the Cowboys.
Team.
And we'll be in good shape.
Right, really. The Cows seem to agree. I've asked a couple of them, and they're not that thrilled with those guys.
Yeah, well, it happens. So there's lots of snippets and pieces of news that happen, so I'm kind of glad we're doing the show here.
Yeah, good.
For example,
let's
just give you a quick rundown.
All right.
And in no special order, this is just the way I happen to have it on the computer here. So the COVID tracking project notes that because of the holidays, a lot of the tracking for coronavirus disease may actually make it look like it's better than it is.
Oh, good. People could
because of the holidays, you don't always get all of the information, and then you get this big spike when everybody dumps their data together next Monday.
Yeah. Well, that'll make it look like Thanksgiving was a dangerous time to gather.
Right, which it is, but you won't know that really for 12 days. So, Daily Update published yesterday, states reported 1.7 million tests, 183,000 cases, 2,284 deaths.
Quite a bit.
So
where's the slacking off here?
You have 2,200 deaths in a day. That's double what we're used to just from a couple of days ago. Oh, my goodness, it's getting to be 1,000 deaths. Now it's 2,000. And the spike is on the way up. And very soon we're going to overtake what happened in April. The hospitalization rate is way higher than it was in April already. And so are the daily cases.
Yeah. Arguably, these are these deaths are your Halloween aftermath. I mean, I don't think it was not a bunch of trick-or-treating kids, but that's about when they would have gotten it.
Well, basically 5 weeks, so trace it back 5 weeks because it takes about 2 weeks to get it in the hospital and then another 3 weeks to die. And so, that's what happens. And that's why Thanksgiving is such a grim time because we're telling people, and there's plenty of idiots, like the mayor of Denver or governor of California, who say, do as I say, not as I do, and tell people not to get together in large gatherings, except I will.
Yeah.
Denver's excuse was, look, I had to fly to see my family. Otherwise, I would have had to fly them to see me. You're not getting something about this. The idea is not to get together. It isn't a question of whether you drive there or not.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. It's bizarre. I mean, he did put it like, stay home unless stay home if you can. And then he said, well, but it's my family. I can't. Well.
Right. Well, so in the intersection of medicine, politics, and bizarreness, late last night, Amy Coney Barrett and the Supremes, that's a singing group, could change the Supreme Court's balance on religious liberty, wrote Jack Jenkins, a progressive religious reporter, on October 22nd, 2020. And in fact, that's what happened. Last night in a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court decided that New York State has no right to try to limit religious gatherings. That includes Orthodox Jewish weddings, which can be 1,000 people, or affect the Catholic diocese. And that's a public health issue. And I'm not a lawyer. and I don't know the law. I'm telling you it's a wrongly decided decision because it's going to kill people. But bad. That's the first of many bad decisions you can expect to have from the Supreme Court.
Yes, I think so. Lots of analysis about the decision. No one's surprised by it, of course. And essentially, it was a decision of religious services are things that we like to see happening and maybe even like to attend, and so therefore we'll do it. Well, I mean, the five justices
in the middle of a pandemic, and so the idea that the state has a obligation to try to keep their citizens safe was just completely overridden. John Roberts voted with the Liberals.
God will help you.
And so it's amazing that Roberts is turning out to be the supreme moderate.
Supreme. That's good. I like that. Okay.
Right. Meanwhile, in court, the GOP effort to invalidate more than 2.5 million votes in Pennsylvania dealt yet another setback.
Yeah, that's usually going to be tough.
Right. There was what I thought at the time was kind of a minor thing. Pennsylvania had already certified the election for Biden. He won. There's no going back on that. Touch black, no going back. And then a judge, a local judge, said, I'm going to put a freeze on all of this stuff. I want the status quo to stay because we're going to have a hearing on Monday. Let's talk about this. Of course, the status quo is that Biden already won.
Okay, that's not a bad status quo.
So the Democrats said, all right, that's weird, but whatever. If you want to keep the status quo that we won, I can live with that for another couple of days. But that was overridden by a higher court in Pennsylvania. And so a temporary order blocking further certification of election results was stayed on appeal from state officials who had already formalized President-elect Joe Biden's win the day before. Says the Washington Post legal expert said the case had little chance of success, much like the other last-ditch GOP election lawsuits. And, of course, the illustration for this little chance of success has Rudy Giuliani, personal lawyer to President Trump, speaking at a news conference Wednesday in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Right. So
because the Four Seasons Total Landscaping place was booked for the holidays, I suppose.
Yeah.
And Trump was supposed to go there.
Yes.
But according to the, again, Washington Post, his aides talked him out of going.
Yes.
Because it would have looked so embarrassing and humiliating to lose yet again that the loser's stench would be even worse than it is already.
Yeah.
And so he finally agreed just to call in.
Yeah, there was a brief attempt to blame it on COVID, to say that the legal team had been exposed to, and they have been. They were exposed last week. Everybody who did show up for the hearing on behalf of the Trump campaign is supposed to be quarantining from their exposure to COVID last week, but they said there was a new exposure, and that's why Trump didn't go, even though Trump claims he's immune and could kiss everybody. I think the new exposure
was Boris Epstein, who is one of the nutters that works with Rudy Giuliani as part of the elite strike force.
Yeah, right.
Of COVID.
He had a very close quarters interview with him on a radio show the other day. Nice picture circulating, and then poof, he got COVID. Weird.
Yeah. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but Justin Levitt is a professor at Loyola Law School who tracks voting rights litigation, called the case in Pennsylvania, quote, internally incoherent, end quote, and in scare quotes here, an attempt to magically disappear an entire election, end scare quote. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
If you clap hard enough, maybe it'll just go away. That's the
good description.
Jenna Ellis theory and Sidney Powell theory of how you try these things in court. You don't need facts. You just have to keep saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over. The Dominion, Hugo Chavez, Soros is funding. It's all crazy,
Yeah.
And then Alex Jones and Amy Coney Barrett will run with it.
Yeah.
Amy Coney Barrett is a nutcase. I mean, and it's going to get bad. I don't think people really appreciate how bad it's going to get, but we'll see.
Right. Appreciate in the sense of course, anticipate.
I'm not a laid-back, lawyerly analyst like Armando, but she's bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll find out. I mean, we knew, but that's why she got the job, and also
that's why she got the job. That's why it was rushed through. And so, as part of that, you have the always annoying Washington press corps, like Phil Mattingly in this case, who I normally like, but he says, For an institution that hasn't exactly covered itself in glory in recent years, the inability of Congress to reach a COVID relief agreement stands out as particularly colossal failure, even by its own very low standards.
Yeah.
Now, Republicans, Phil, Republicans, just say it. Yeah. Democrats passed relief. And we have this thing where whenever Congress doesn't do something, you don't say, well, Republicans blocked it or Republicans couldn't pay. You say Congress couldn't do this.
Yes.
Republicans got their judges. Republicans passed this, but Congress couldn't do that because they're incapable of saying, well, Republicans couldn't do this. Republicans couldn't pass it. You just don't see that. It's just verboten. You never write that.
I don't know. Yeah, they learned it. They learned it from Obama, who did the same thing. He changed his mind now, but he's not president anymore.
Yeah, and so that's a bad thing. So Republicans screwed this up. Republicans only do judges. Republicans are the ones that got you Amy Coney Barrett. Republicans are why New York State people are going to be at risk. And, it's important to say that Republicans are the reason for this.
Yes.
So, Boswood and some of the other people who follow us on Twitter and listen to the show point out, Mann and Ornstein said this in 2012. Let's just say it. It's the Republicans. And so, they've learned nothing in those 6, 7, 8 years.
They didn't read the thing.
No, they just banned those guys from talking on TV.
So you never found out about it. All right. Well, yes, we've got problems.
Right. So, not everything is bad. Some things are good. And I'll tell you a good thing. It's Thanksgiving, so I think we should be thankful for a lot of things.
Okay.
I'm thankful for is I'm thankful for the Republicans and Democrats who worked the polls, who counted the votes, who canvassed the way they're supposed to be canvassing. And it wasn't the big names. It wasn't Marco Rubio or Rob Portman or Ted Cruz who saved democracy. It was our neighbors. And because it was our neighbors, it made it very hard to yell at them in person. So, it wasn't Mr. Smith coming to Washington with his filibuster. It was your neighbor saying, I'm just doing my job here. I'm counting the votes. I'm going to do it till I'm done. It's a 16-hour day, and you can protest outside all you want to. I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to count the votes, and I'm going to do it till I'm done. And that's what saved democracy.
Oh, well, that's
good. Some of them are Republicans. Some of them are Democrats. Local level, that's fine. Washington, not so much.
No.
Useless group of Republicans in Washington. They didn't do a thing to help.
Dang. I wish they had.
Right. So here's a piece going through our smorgasbord of things. This is Politico magazine, and we're flitting from topic to topic. Yesterday we spent all day on one topic. Today we're going to flit from one to the other. It's going to be lightning round stuff.
Excellent.
Politico magazine it wasn't ideology that sank House Democrats. It was bad strategy. Poor decisions from the National Party left Democratic candidates in swing districts unable to hold their own. When you read the article, what it basically comes down to is they didn't knock on doors.
Oh.
Their data was bad. The result of polling that vastly underestimated how many Republicans would turn out to vote, how their ever-strengthening fidelity to Trump would cause them to back GOP candidates all the way down the ticket. Democrats didn't necessarily have that. They voted for Biden, but didn't necessarily vote down ticket. Their understanding of very specific voter beliefs in very different local districts was even worse, which is why Hispanic voters lumped together in a non-differentiated, assumedly pro-immigration anti-Trump bloc, provided the party with disastrous surprises in South Florida and border areas of Texas. While the party, and we covered that in the show pretty well, I think so. Nobody listening to the show thinks that the Latiñes vote is a monolith. And if you do, then you have remedial work to do with a bunch of shows to listen to. While the party isn't solely to blame for using bad data, it should have known better than to use polls as the main indicator of future success in voter preferences. 2016, it offered ample warning that polling was unreliable. And the messaging dictates coming from Washington, because in retrospect, everybody's a genius. And the messaging dictates coming from Washington delivered to all the congressional campaigns frequently missed the mark. Democratic campaigns we endorsed and were in frequent communication with were told to hit the Republicans hard for their poor handling of the coronavirus, but swing voters didn't view their local GOP candidates as complicit in the Russian roulette that the Trump White House had played. And advice on conference calls we set in on that encouraged candidates to run TV ads saying they were angry, fed up, and frustrated was ill-suited for candidates of color, especially black women, running in nearly all white districts. So you got to know the territory, like they say in the music, man.
I guess so.
And then they go on and talk about the fact that they didn't knock on doors and voters like to have their doors knocked on and at least made some sort of pretense that you're asking for their vote.
Yes, that's true. Although the one thing, I guess, the most consistently is that voters want their doors knocked on and will tell you they do not want their doors knocked on.
Well, voters tell you they don't want a lot of things that they really want.
Yeah, well,
sick and tired of you bothering me, but you didn't ask me for my vote.
Yeah, that's true. That does stand out as one big difference. Even though people want to be asked, they don't mind being asked in different forms necessarily, but in person is a big one, and they missed out on that. I'm also kind of curious about the idea.
I forgot to say, maybe I said it and I can't remember anymore, but the Thanksgiving Day parade you can watch on TV, but onlookers aren't allowed. There's no people actually watching in New York City because of the COVID rules. If you're on the street,
hide your eyes.
But that hasn't come to the Supreme Court. So maybe by the afternoon they'll be allowed.
Yeah, but the parade will be over, so that's fine. It will be mooted at that point. That
renders the decision, as they say in lawyer talk, moot.
Right. Moo, as they say in regular
one of the things I learned on the internet is that's what it means to say moot.
Right. Okay, so we do have that squared away. People have learned that. Who, thinking about this article you just read, who missed the idea that, polls might be a little wonky?
Oh, you want to see who the authors were of this piece?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, not that. No, when they said that people that they, I've been talking to about this thing, that they somehow missed the message. You shouldn't have been relying on polling.
This is a group called Square One, former Obama White House appointee, Miti Saith, and Will Levitt, co-founder of Square One.
They're not pollsters?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that one of the things that they threw out there was that, people should have realized that there was something wrong with the polling. Like, I thought everybody said there was something wrong with the polling for 4 years. Why did that? Well, because I guess maybe, election season comes around, polling happens, and they're like, God, I love polling.
So Square One is a nonprofit that recruits and discovers young, diverse, progressive congressional candidates and provides high-impact, hands-on support in order to win.
Okay,
so they're all about winning. For the past 3.5 years, through our organization, Square One, we have been, the people who wrote this article, working exclusively and on the ground with Democratic candidates running in precisely those sorts of districts that we're talking about here. Progressives accuse moderates of having alienated the party base. Moderates blame progressives for having scared off potential crossover voters.
That I remember.
I look at this and think, okay, Democrats are Democrats. Independents and even some Democrats in tough swing districts with sloganeering around socialism and calls to defund the police. But as you pointed out many times, the campaigns actually didn't use those slogans. For the past 3.5 years, through our organization, Square One, we've been working exclusively and on the ground with Democratic candidates running in precisely these sorts of districts. And we're with many of our endorsed candidates from day one, providing the connections, resources, and support to launch, run, and win the campaigns. And we're sure that both arguments are wrong. It's not moderates blaming progressives, and progressives shouldn't blame moderates. It was an ideology that sank seeming Democratic shoo-ins like Gina Ortiz-Jones, a first-generation American Air Force veteran, who when she first ran in 2018 came only 927 votes short of winning her longtime red South District border district. And it wasn't too progressive politics. It was... that consigned other high-performing freshman incumbents like Lauren Underwood into painfully protracted ballot counts. By the way, in New York 22, based on the latest that came out yesterday, Anthony Brindisi, the Democratic incumbent, looks like he's going to win his race against Claudia Tenney in upstate New York by like 18 votes.
Yeah. Real close, and another one of those ones that if you just wait and finish the counting, stop crying you lost this district and analyzing why you lost this district until you know you lost it.
Yeah. It was weak strategy based on bad polling information and poor decisions in the National Party that left Democratic candidates in swing districts and candidates of color in particular unable to hold their own. The fact is, if you're going to win a campaign, you got to campaign. That's their main message.
Okay.
And one thing that Democrats running for Congress couldn't do this year upon orders from the party's campaign was go out and campaign. And again, that has to do with the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it may have been the right thing to do from a public health perspective. And these political people are saying, but it handicapped us in terms of winning. And that may be true.
Okay.
But, in order to save your voters, sometimes you have to lose.
I guess so. Somehow.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Just like maybe you don't see your family this year for Thanksgiving because
Make a sacrifice.
It isn't a question of driving there or flying there. It's a question of Zooming there.
Yeah, right. Can do that. All right. Well, okay. So interesting, and another good look at it, and it gave us a great opportunity to say, yeah, there are still some races that are going to turn around, and this too, just like 2018 in particular. But yes, always wait, count the votes. We've just been out shouting, count every vote. Count every vote.
Alan Dershowitz this morning is wondering whether he should nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As a professor emeritus at Harvard, I can nominate. What should I do? Call 24/7.
Anyone can
call
nominate.
This number. Please like, share, and subscribe to the Dersh Show. I guess he has a YouTube channel.
Yes, the Dersh Show, I call it. You put the emphasis correctly.
Right. So Trump just tried to pull off a coup, and we should nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Right. The Nobel Prize for coup.
But as people point out on Twitter, it was a peaceful coup. So he's still in the running.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good news. He'll be very proud and happy to realize he was nominated. All right. So that's definitely the most important thing ever for Dershowitz to be doing.
Yep.
How come he's not on the crack legal team?
That's all important. Anyway, that takes us to the first hour, but it gives you an idea of some of the stuff that's happening here.
All right. Yes, that is very good. The other, I guess, legal news, we can discuss it a little bit, I suppose. There's not that much to discuss. The pardon of notorious spy Michael Flynn may or may not be completed. He tweeted it, but we haven't seen the paperwork, and you never know.
Yeah. We also have David Perdue, the crook, coming up after
Yes.
the break.
Okay, good. We'll get to that. And for those of you who have been wondering why now, why pardon Flynn now, the answer is very simple. The president has just come to realize that Flynn's attorney is crazy and incompetent, and he'd better take care of him if he's ever going to right away. So we'll be right back.
He's hiring her back, in other words.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're back. I guess we could, I don't know, you want to throw around some more legal topics or move forward from that? Flynn?
Well, everything is all together. I don't have that much to say about Flynn. I will say this, though. Again, not being a lawyer, I can't tell you about the details about the fact that he lied to the FBI and so on and so forth. As a regular civilian American, I really don't care whether Flynn goes to jail or not. I will say that the thing that bothers me most about the Flynn pardon is that even though Trump hasn't done an incredible number of pardons, most of the ones that he's done that get your attention, like Joe Arpaio, are just bad. And so you look at this and say, okay, when is he going to pardon Evita? When is he going to pardon Junior? When is he going to pardon Jared, and when is he going to pardon himself? That's the only thing you can take away from looking at this.
Yeah, I don't know if he has any strategy
Sidney
for
Powell.
it. I'm sorry? Also,
Sidney Powell. I'm sure that, when she's sanctioned, he'll pardon her, too.
Yeah, I guess so.
She's going to be sanctioned, right? You can't just go around lying all the time in court.
Yeah. You're not supposed to do that. Sanctions are pretty rare. And usually they tend
presidents usually don't get involved. But
that's
this
true.
Is Trump, so,
That's true. So I don't know. I guess that's possible. As I did see somebody ask me, Boo Radley, asked me, not the real one, but on Twitter yesterday whether Flynn can still be court-martialed. I don't think there's any reason to do that, and his crimes were committed while he was outside of the military
I say court-martial
structure.
Trump and impeach Flynn.
Sure, why not?
We're sick and tired
break
of
all the
impeaching
rules.
Trump and court-martialing Flynn. Let's just do it the other way around. Why not? It's 2020.
There's no reason
You can
not
do whatever the hell you damn want. There aren't any rules.
Yeah. Well, okay. I don't see why we shouldn't try it. I mean, Flynn won't be court-martialed because what he did as a civilian. Although you really should bring him up on charges. You can still court-martial him for what he was doing when he was still at the Defense Intelligence Agency. But the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ, under which you would be court-martialed, is federal law too, and those would be federal charges, and the pardon would obtain against UCMJ too. So, no. I did, however, get reminded yesterday that there are state treason laws. I don't know why, but there are, and just thought that was fun. New York doesn't have one, I don't think, so that's too bad. But for those of you who would be upset about not being able to try Donald Trump for treason, I suppose you could try him for treason in one of the states. I don't know whether you have to be a traitor against that state or what, or when the last time anyone was tried for treason by a state might have been, maybe Civil War. But it's out there, just something fun to pretend you know something about.
Well, has he rooted for the Red Sox? We'll get him in New York State.
There you go. That could be possible. You never know.
That's easy enough to do. So this thing caught my eye. Remember, there's still 2 races to be run. And if the Square One folks are correct,
2 racists
Reverend
who are running.
Warnock and John Ossoff in the Senate in Georgia still have races to win. And they'll be knocking on doors, I think.
Yes.
But this caught my eye because of that. John Ossoff is running against David Perdue.
Right.
And according to this, Senator Perdue insisted he had no input at all on stock buys, but new evidence shows he did. Now remember,
it's a way to rate a Trumpster
when
comment.
This thing about coronavirus first hit in January and February, but even as early as January, Trump knew it was going to be a problem.
Yes, he told Woodward.
And the senators were told in an intelligence briefing, this is going to be a problem.
Right. Go make
Rather
money.
than do anything about it to help save American lives, the senators, some of them, went out and bought stock or sold stock or somehow took their portfolios, because they're rich enough to have them, and manipulated them in such a way that a pandemic would help them. And Kelly Loeffler did it, and she's running against Warnock, and David Perdue did it, and he's running against John Ossoff. So that's what this article is referring to. A new report shows the Georgia senator reaching out directly to his investment advisor at Goldman Sachs, directing him to make a massive stock sale. So he said, I have nothing to do with this. It's merely coincidence. I just told them to make me money. And they, for some reason, coincidentally went ahead and followed my advice.
That is odd, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Well, so he's cheating and lying.
So that's who's in the Senate. That's the Republican Senate.
Yes.
And so,
that's what
is
makes
it a campaign issue? Senate. It better be a campaign issue in Georgia, because the more you look into this, the more it turns out that Loeffler and Perdue are both doing this. And that's not going to make them popular with regular folks. A partisanship is strong. I'm not guaranteeing you that they're going to lose, but I'm saying it's going to have an effect. It's going to hit. Just like all of the stuff that Trump said about the military. Well, it turns out when you actually look at voting districts, he lost some of those military-based districts in the election. So, that kind of stuff matters.
Yeah, he's still shocked about that and pretends it's obvious evidence of fraud.
Right, from the Daily Beast here. The Georgia Republican's history of trades has come under close scrutiny after he reported purchases and sales of stocks in companies that were likely to be affected by the pandemic. The most controversial of these sales came after closed-door Senate briefings after the spread of coronavirus in January. So that's the idea. The Senate finds out information, and then what do? They use it in insider trading. They say, let's be Martha Stewart. Let's just make some money on this, because the little people, they don't know about it, but we do. And what's wrong with that? This is America.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way they approach it. And I guess they figured, well, we've got the time to handle this and make these trades, because we're not going to be legislating anything about this virus. So I might as well the only other thing there is left for me to do is make money.
So speaking of the virus, so here's more news. Again, we're doing lightning rounds, but these are all kind of interesting situations here. From CBS this morning, David Begnaud, who is their national reporter, had a report from 24 hours ago. There is a large conglomerate there, Sanford Health, and it was interesting because South Dakota, of course, is having this incredible virus problem in the Dakotas there. And he said there's no COVID crisis in the Dakotas. He's against mask mandates. He's the head of a giant healthcare conglomerate. But his chief medical officer said, yeah, there is a crisis, and South Dakota needs a mask mandate.
Oh.
So the CEO got fired.
Why?
And but that's only half the story.
Sanford Health. Okay.
So this morning, that same David Begnaud reports, this may anger South Dakota's GOP governor, Kristi Noem, but West Virginia's governor saw that CBS Evening News report from South Dakota, and he told his people, based on how bad the COVID crisis is in South Dakota, he doesn't want to be South Dakota, even though there's people telling him, be like South Dakota.
Yeah. Well, it's a dumb thing to say because they're really in trouble. So I don't know what else to say. They got it bad there. And, all right, so they're going to fire their CEO. They're going to do things that are dumb fire the guy who's our CEO and write about this? Is that what happened?
Say that again?
Well, I'm getting confused about who is. Let's see. Sanford Health CEO said there's no COVID crisis. Okay,
and then he got fired over it.
Okay, yeah, and then I reversed it in my head. Like, wait a minute, he said there was one, and they fired him.
No,
to be
his
political?
chief medical officer said there was one.
Okay, and they fired.
And the chief medical officer. See, again, you have to understand, and I've had this discussion and argument with people online about this. How can the CEO of a hospital or a healthcare corporation not understand what's going on with the details of PCR? Well, guys, that's not their expertise. It's not like the administrators in your hospital know that much about medicine.
They might not. They might pick something up
Some
along the way.
Don't.
Some
of them don't know a damn thing, but they're smart enough to listen to the people who do.
Yeah, well.
Like your chief medical officer, for example.
Right. Like, I'll look ridiculous in the middle of all these
So the idea
doctors.
that the chief executive officer of a health conglomerate wouldn't know anything about well, of course they don't. Yeah. That's not their job. Their job is to make money.
Well, right, yeah. Not only their job is to make money for the company, although they sometimes view that as their job is to make money for themselves.
You know, the whole attitude here, though, for years and years and years was, look, if you go to business school and you learn how to manage, you can manage anything, widgets or hospitals, all the same. Mm-hmm. You go from one area to another area, one sector to another sector, because it's all about management. It's not about what you actually make or do. You don't have to know anything about that. Do you think that that's an overbroad brush? I've worked in places where it's not.
Yeah, you don't think?
It's not too broad at all. And in fact, those folks don't last.
Oh, I see. Okay. I thought you meant.
But they're there, and the idea that you don't have people in the hospital who, everybody in the hospital must know something about medicine, or they wouldn't be. No, if you're in management, you may not know squat.
I see. Okay, I thought. I think it was an overly
broad
brush.
My job is to save money.
Tell people.
My job is to cut costs.
They could work anywhere.
And those stupid doctors who want everything, they have to be managed like children.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there are clearly. Healthcare would be one easy to name sector where you might be able to help business students out by saying there are sensitivities, strange sensitivities.
Yeah, sensitivities is a good word. But all I'm saying is that when you hear a story about a CEO who doesn't know anything about what's going on from a public health perspective, let alone a medical perspective, it's not shocking or surprising.
True. I mean, the CEO of the Trump organization knows nothing about real estate. So
Rick Scott would be a public health expert by that,
true.
way of logic, right? Because he ran a large for-profit, health and hospitals organization for which he was, cheating people on. But he's an expert on it. Not public health.
That's true. Right. Okay. No, I get the point there. You'd think they'd pick something up along the way.
But you don't hear Rick Scott leading the coronavirus pandemic response, do you?
No.
But he's a Republican. And he's a loyal Trump. And if he's so expert on all of this stuff, how come he's not the one in charge? Why did they put Pence when they could have had Rick Scott do it? Because Rick Scott's an expert. He used to be the CEO of a large conglomerate. Right. He knows about as much as this guy does in the Dakotas.
I am surprised. I guess maybe Trump wouldn't put him in charge because he doesn't look like he's from central casting for being in charge of things.
I'm just saying,
has no hair.
Nobody in their right mind thinks of Rick Scott as an expert on this stuff, and they shouldn't.
Right, that's true. They're not wrong in that sense. But maybe he doesn't have central. Although it could be. What if you're casting for Daddy Warbucks? Then you would look like he was from.
That's the whole idea that if you're a businessman, you can run the country, as you pointed out, right?
Yes, well, right.
If the country ran.
Never been able
what
to
did you
do
say
that.
on Twitter today? If the country was run like a business, then Trump would be escorted out with his stuff in a cardboard box.
We've said that a lot. Sure, there's no reason.
Within 24 hours.
Business knows you don't keep disgruntled employees that you just fired. You know what? Take another couple of months to handle our sensitive affairs. Do it the way you see fit. We trust you. And then at the end of the termination period, you go home. Right. Trump's been sabotaging everything and burning things down on the way out the door. And you had to have known he was going to do that. But in this country, 44 times before him, we've had people who say, I'm still going to live here. This is my country. People will be very angry or upset if I sabotage things. And that's gotten the better of them. I mean, they've done some dumb things on their way out the door because they no longer feel like they'll be held accountable. That's definitely true. But never stuff like, you know what, let's burn all our treaties. Why not?
Why not?
And I guess one of the problems is we don't know that Trump will be living here and that this will be his country for the rest of his life. He might leave and live elsewhere. So you can't be 100% sure.
Right. So I'm going to leave you
Also,
with this thought again about things to be thankful for in our lightning round session today for Thanksgiving. This is Marcus H. Johnson writing on Twitter, a political scientist.
Okay.
A take I feel like should be explored more. The resistance was wildly successful. Oh. It started in 2017. It foreshadowed some of the Democrats' 18 and 2020 suburban strength. It helped push Democrats to consistently oppose Trump. It motivated base turnout in 2018, which gave key governorships and state legislature seats, and I would add Secretary of States, like Katie Hobbs in Arizona. And it led to congressional pressure, which severely limited Trump's agenda and reduced his ability to legitimately claim credit.
Okay. Yeah.
So one-term presidents are rare, and, we should thank the resistance for that because that's where a lot of this stuff came from.
Okay.
So I think he's got a great point about that.
Yeah, I think so. Send that along so I can show everybody. I think yeah. I'm going to say yes to that. Good job, everybody.
Okay, good.
I don't know how else to agree.
It's a reminder that when the suburbs turned against Trump, absolutely positively, it was Republicans in the suburbs that did that, led by women. But there are also people of color in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Places around Atlanta and such. It's not, all lily white anymore the way it used to be.
True. Very true. Good point also. So, all right, this is well said and acceptably stated. I don't know who's going to... Well, I mean, I guess people could take it... certainly someone will come out of the woodwork and say, well, I don't know, wildly successful? How wild was it? Wow.
It was pretty wild. I mean, the day you started the Trump era with giant women's marches, started the whole thing about, no, we're not just going to go say, okay, fine. We lost. You get to do everything. You can have your Amy Coney Barrett tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that he's come out and said so, and that's helpful.
Right. Here's another reminder, and this from the New York Times. A new political force emerges in Georgia. Asian American voters. The Asian American population in the state has doubled in 2 decades, and many live in the Atlanta suburbs, which voted for Joe Biden by large margins.
Well, good.
And so they have some really interesting signs here. Vietnamese Americans for Biden. Political signs outside the home of Cam Ashling, a Democratic activist in Georgia. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
Pakistanis. Asian Americans,
Very good.
all
very
in Gwinnett
large.
County, and interesting story that people who are white males living in Washington don't always cover. So it's nice
that's
to
good.
see
I like
people get
that
out
one.
and cover some of this stuff.
I'd like to have that, and we'll pass that one on as well. It's a good point, and another it carries over from the Latine discussion. Asia is huge. I don't know if you guys know this, but
Don't get involved in a land war.
right. Don't get right. Exactly. Always a good idea, particularly for the Asians who are there. You don't want to be involved in having a war on their land, and they don't want a war either. But we don't know exactly what that means every time when you say that. Oh, lots of Asian Americans. Well, remember how large and varied Asia is. And but yeah, we've been conditioned to kind of think of, I suppose, when they think of the Asian American vote, California comes immediately to mind. But it's like, well, Asians of whom there are very many and are very varied in form and kind, live all over the place because they're people and they go where there are jobs and houses, and be aware of this. And that it doesn't necessarily mean, Chinese or Americans or Korean Americans, Pakistani and Indian Americans too, and that they settle in a lot of places and a lot of.
Indian Americans may have a particular affinity to Kamala Harris.
Right.
And it may be that in California, for example, Vietnamese settling there, fleeing from communist Vietnam,
yes,
may feel the same way about socialism as South Florida residents fleeing from Cuba.
True.
So all sorts of different communities vote in different ways. I'm going to end this by just looking at my own state, Connecticut. Greg Giroux posted this. Is kind of interesting. Connecticut official election results finally came in, and you'd have to say the Connecticut election was a success. There was no complaints about how things went. We got to vote by mail for the first time. It was sort of a secret, no excuse of absentee ballot method. Mm-hmm. That is to say, all you had to do when you had to request a form, and when you got the form, you had to check on it that I'm doing this because of COVID.
Yeah, and then put it in a cardboard box in a window.
But the thing is, it was wildly successful. A lot of people did it, and there were very few complaints of problems. And that cardboard box in the window worked just fine because it's a small town. And again, our friends and neighbors are the people who collect it. Again, mostly Republicans in my town. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
They did a fine job. Connecticut official election results: Biden 1,080,680 votes. That's 59.2%.
Wow.
Trump got 715,291. That's 39.2%. Other got about 28,000. So it was up 11% from 2016. And in 2016, Connecticut voted 54.6 to 40.9 for Clinton. So it was like a 13-point win, and that became a 20-point win this year. Oof. And interestingly, just about the entire state shifted left except for the cities.
Which were already left, or?
They were already left, but they shifted ever so slightly right. Again, if you look at the narrative, Trump made gains. Fine.
Yes,
he went from 11% to 12%, or maybe 11% to 13%. He went from a small to a small.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So percentage-wise, he did okay, but vote-wise, not so much.
And I have seen some suggestions that in some spots where they say, well, Trump made gains. He made gains from what really was sort of an all-time low for Republicans in 2016. He got some of the worst performance among minority voters that the Republicans had.
Yeah, it's important to pick the year that gives you the largest gap if you're going to say these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But it depends what kind of point you're trying to say, right? In making the point about 2016, it turns out Hillary Clinton wasn't a bad candidate in those areas. And so if you're looking at Biden running against Clinton in those areas, it's going to be basically a wash or maybe a slight advantage to Trump. And when you have huge turnout compared to 2016, which you did, then you're going to get people who tend to be conservative voters who don't generally vote because they're just not that interested, relatively low information voters who get their news from Fox, and they're going to vote Republican. Surprising. Not really. And yet the numbers, the raw numbers, as opposed to the percentages, don't really suggest that that's going to change anything. In fact, Connecticut is more blue this year than it was in 2016. It was pretty blue in 2016. There's plenty of red areas. I could tell you where they are. There's a lot of Joe Lieberman voters that are still here. But, just overall, my state did fine. It wasn't close.
Well, good. Well done. Cardboard boxes and all.
Right. Connecticut, we have 5 districts, so it's easy to run them down. Connecticut presidential results by congressional district. In Connecticut 1, John Larson's district, Biden was 63-35. In Joe Courtney's district, which is the whole eastern half of the state, Biden 54, Trump 43. In Connecticut 3, Rosa DeLauro, Biden 59, Trump 38. Connecticut 4, Jim Himes, that's the Gold Coast and the commuters. Okay. Biden 64, Trump 34, commuters to New York City, that is. Yes. And in my own district, it was Jahana Hayes' district. It was Biden 55 and Trump 44. So Trump actually got the highest group, the highest percentage vote in Connecticut was actually in my district. And I keep telling people, although Chris Murphy once represented us and John Hayes represents us now, and Clinton did get the most votes in the last election, it's not a blood red area. It's not a dark blue area. It's really a purple area that tends to lean blue a little bit. In this particular case, they wanted no part of Trump, but it's not nearly as blue as a lot of the other parts of the state. So when I talk to my neighbors, a lot of them are Republicans. A lot of them are, relatively conservative. They tend to be socially liberal, fiscal conservatives. They don't want to have anything to do with racists. They tend not to vote for them, but they'll reelect people who are, for gun rights, and they'll reelect people who are for cutting taxes. And it's just the way this area is, like many other areas of the country. So I don't feel so isolated in Connecticut that you can't figure out what's going on in the rest of the country. Talk to your neighbors; they're the same as everybody else elsewhere.
Okay, well, I'll listen.
Same
to you
Trump signs, the same Biden signs, but you got a good idea what's going on. Local politics is local politics, and I don't presume to speak for what really happened in Milwaukee, but we got people like Michigan Advance and other local blogs covering the Michigan area. If you want a good read about what really happened there, we did Tim Alberta. Tim Alberta is a national reporter from Michigan who had a pretty good idea of what's going on. We spent yesterday devoted to his article. But Michigan Advance and other local blogs, if you read them regularly with a series of articles, will really give you a flavor about what's going on. And, that's where you learn that, maybe John James wasn't that popular in Detroit. And maybe that's one of the reasons why he lost. And maybe the lawsuits and ginned up fraud stuff really has to do with the fact that Detroit just didn't like this guy and didn't particularly like Trump. And it had a lot more to do with that than it did with phony votes.
Okay. Well, yeah. It had nothing to do with phony votes.
As a matter of fact, it did.
Everything is going to have more to do with it than phony votes did. So that's good news.
Yeah.
Not that you would be able to tell from the coverage.
So that's it for today.
All right.
There's your lightning round that lasted an hour.
Excellent. Right. Good. A lot of lightning.
But there's a lot of stuff. I wanted to get all this stuff in because I think it's all important. Watching the Anthony Brindisi, Claudia Tenney race up in 22, New York 22, is going to be important. And again, the narrative is set on the night of the election, but it's really election month. And so everybody told you that was going to be the case. It turned out to be the case. Yeah, they were right about that.
You told me. Right. Yeah. Oh, I heard about this, but I'm very nervous.
Yeah. Right. And so, we have these, that's why we sell Democratic desks, so you can hide under them with your mini bar. And somebody was tweeting around this incredibly fancy bed that was surrounded by workspaces. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. I wondered why the hell someone was doing that.
I have no idea.
Why are they doing it?
Yeah, but maybe we can incorporate that into the Democratic desk so you can have your entire living area just one piece of furniture.
And they look very adequately padded. You could hit your head on it hard and without giving yourself a concussion.
Yeah, there's a little table there so you could eat. Done. There's another workspace where you can watch TV. You can just move from one side of the bed to the other side of the bed. The bed's actually in the middle, but it's surrounded by these other pieces of furniture. It's one unit. And I'm wondering, because I grew up in New York City.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how you get that up the stairs of those 6th floor walk-up tenements.
I assume it comes in an IKEA-type box, and you assemble it when you get
Did you
there.
know in New York there are actually businesses, the services that you can call, that take your furniture apart, get it up those stairs, and then put it back together at the top?
There's a service for everything.
There's a service for anything. So with that, it's Thanksgiving. Be thankful we're still alive. And Will, you got a show tomorrow?
Yeah, why
Let's
not?
go to semi-holiday. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if we did one today, we should be able to do one tomorrow. Although
I'm not
might
here
think
tomorrow.
about sleeping. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And I realized I forgot to ask Scott. Like, are you available to actually summarize these things, or are you taking the day off? I mean,
or do I have to do it?
Yeah, right. I mean, maybe that'll affect whether I have a show or not tomorrow. I can get up, but do I have to summarize it?
Right. In any case, I'll be back on Monday,
Excellent.
and we'll see what happened then. And, the craziness is starting to dial down, folks. Get used to it. We're starting to get to normal again. The pandemic's going to be the dominating story, but it's not going to be Trump. Giuliani goes to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and none of the networks covered it. You had to watch OAN to see the press conference.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was on my
you're going to have
system.
pundit roundups on Daily Kos that don't even mention Trump.
Oh, wow. That'll really be exciting eventually when that happens. I'll look forward to that.
All righty. Take care, and I'll talk to you next week.
Very good. Enjoy the holiday.
Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Etc. And, okay. Everyone should
Watch
do
some
that.
football. Eat some turkey.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, Abby. Let her know. Okay. We'll see you then in a couple of days. And, I suppose there's so much happening that there's really no reason not to do a show tomorrow except for wanting to knock off for a little bit. But I find that probably like you listening, once you get started, this is not so bad. There really is a lot of stuff to talk about, enough to keep the energy up for 2 hours. And then, of course, I always say, well, after that, I'm going to take a nap today. I'm going to get some rest to go back to bed. And I haven't done it yet. But we're waiting for the Trump crazy to die off so that I can feel like I can close my eyes for a few minutes. For the first time in 4 years. All right, back to the salt buns in 1 minute. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I am puzzled by some of the other things flying by on my Twitter feed. Oh, yeah. Very interesting. Noticed here this is just hilarious. I mean, for those for locals like me, it's hilarious. I just saw comedian Leslie Jones tweeting just a one-line reaction to a television clip that she's got here. She's she's free to do these things because she's a comedian, and just her line is y'all effing with me, huh? Okay, what's she talking about here? And it's a clip of when the clip is frozen, it features front and center one of the pundits on the air discussing things on MSNBC, and it's funny because the Virginia politics people have picked up on the fact that Leslie Jones found this guy funny. It's John Flannery is the pundit in question, and I got to tell you, John Flannery, first of all, he's sort of a local phenomenon. He's right here in Loudoun County, and I think a frequent fixture on MSNBC. And I don't know whether it's whether he is the way he is because he's cultivating the life that the lifestyle that gets you on MSNBC as a pundit. He's very much given to, well, for instance, in this picture, he's wearing a bow tie, which is kind of one of those things that if you want to be on as a pundit a lot. I don't know, somewhere along the line, people figured out that bow tie means political nerd and that means pundit and put him on the air. But John Flannery has a very, let's say, distinctive look. You want to follow him on Twitter? You should. I mean, he's kind of fun and interesting. Jon, he leaves out the H. Jon, I mean, his name is John, but he leaves it out. And it's John Flan is how he tweets. JONFLAN, not flan, the custard pudding, but John Flan, like Flannery, and he's very liberal-minded. I mean, you'll enjoy his commentary. I think you won't be offended by his commentary, but you might be offended by his ties. He loves, and in this clip, he's wearing a red, white, and blue striped tie, which could very easily be mistaken for a barber pole tie, but it's supposed to be flag motif. And he's got a little, tiny American flag sticking out of a, I don't know what, like a coffee cup on his desk behind him. And he's got the nice Zoom room behind him, lots of framed things on the wall. But he's from Loudoun County. And quite honestly, though, he does have a very distinctive look, and he occasionally reminds me of, I don't mean to insult the guy, but he occasionally reminds me of like Max Headroom. He doesn't look like Max Headroom, but he's got the same sort of, he looks like he's CGI, to be honest. I had the hardest time deciding whether or not I thought he was a real human or was just a computer generated graphic of some kind. He's very, and he's got like a real background and everything, and he kind of knows what he's talking about in politics. Plus, he's got these ties and, hair and facial features that make him look like it just pops off the screen. He's very distinctive. And I guess Leslie Jones hasn't run into him before. And so the rest of us here in Loudoun County and in Virginia are like, okay, I get the joke, but you will too if you take a look. I don't know. If you're listening live, I will, I'll tweet it around. Actually, I'll retweet the Virginia Political Memes account of, discovering Leslie Jones's amusement at John Flannery. And John Flannery does, in fact, as noted here in the tweet, serve currently on Loudoun County's Soil and Water Conservation Board. I just had the pleasure of voting to, place him there, as a matter of fact, among others. So, I don't know. Maybe you'll find it funny. It's so good local color and local joke there. But nice guy, worth following, loves being on TV, loves being on video, puts out, does I don't know if it's TikTok, but the TikTok sort of thing of him walking on the trails and on the woods locally and discussing politics. And you might find it a soothing addition to your political Twitter feed. Okay, how else can we unsettle you this morning now that we've had that laugh? Anyway, let's see. What are we looking at? Oh, yeah, right. Other news of the day. News flash brought to us by Josh Marshall earlier this morning. I feel compelled to add this to the news mix. I'll just read you his tweet. School board trustee who bashed LGBT curriculum takes a dump during a Zoom school board meeting. Now, how do you know that? Well, duh. She accidentally, I guess, kept her microphone on, or I don't know, maybe she took the thing with her and she broadcast it to all 150 attendees and resigns. So, man, don't do that. Another Zoom mistake. Hackensack, New Jersey, I guess, is where this happened. Unless there's a Hackensack somewhere else, but I think only one Hackensack that I know of. Hackensack board member who opposed LGBTQ curriculum, although I think there's a typo going on here in the body of the. I was worried, like, gosh, I'm behind the times again on these issues, because in the body of the article, it says LGBTC curriculum, eliminating the Q and replacing it with the C. And I'm like, trying to think, well, how, what is it? I'm so unconnected here. And every time they add a letter to this thing and I have to ask what it is, and I seem so stupid and out of touch. But I think it's just a mistake here. Anyway, Hackensack board member who opposed LGBTQ curriculum resigns after embarrassing Zoom incident. A Hackensack school board member who made national headlines. Now you did. I mean, you hadn't until this point, but now Josh has got you. National headlines. Oh, I'm sorry. The originally made national headlines, and it says here's the typo. By opposing a LGBTC curriculum. And maybe the headline was about the typo. I don't know. Anyway, she's resigned after making a new headline after an embarrassing incident during a Zoom meeting. Now you got what it is. Who is this? Francis Kogelha? Is it Kogelha? Is she Hispanic? I don't know. Is that a name that you recognize as Coggelja? You tell me. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, she didn't realize that she'd left her laptop camera on while she took it with her while going to the bathroom during the public comments section of a board meeting Monday night. Which, I appreciate that you wanted to keep up on things and just had, I have to go to the bathroom. That's the way it is. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's why they sell the laptop camera covers out there. Or you could just stick a piece of tape over it. But then if the microphone is on, that's not going to help anything either. So nearly 150 participants, including students, apparently saw her relieve herself. How wonderful. No one immediately said anything when she returned from her trip to the toilet. Those are well-mannered kids. I don't know what her big complaint is. It sounds like they're being raised right. Don't shame her for it, right? She went to the bathroom. No big deal. No one immediately said anything. A short time later, Vice President Scott James Vickery reportedly told her, "You need to go. We're here trying to get work done while you're sitting on the toilet." So, well, he just came right out and said it. But that maybe that's his role as vice president. Board of Education President Lancelot Powell, the name's amazing here, said that Colgelja couldn't be removed because she was an elected official. We can't make her resign. None of us can kick a board member off. Let's see. So she's going to resign effective November 24th. That was Tuesday. So I guess that's fine. The remaining trustees must fill the vacancy within 65 days or by January 29th, 2021 under state law, just so you have the mechanics of the situation here. Yeah, I mean, why don't we just let her be famous for that and add that she was originally famous for being intolerant about LGBTQ curriculum inclusions, and let you, if you want to, we'll just keep it lighthearted for the moment. Unless if you are from Hackensack or nearby and have reason to believe that she's such an especially egregious person that we need to expand on that, then let us know and point us to an article or, hey, record it for us and we'll play it on the air. There's always that. Remember, if we miss a story that you think is too important to be missed, you can remind us, push us, cajole us. You can't force us to do it, but if you record it, oh boy, that's exciting for me. That's a break. I'll play it. Brian Monroe asks the question, and yeah, I knew somebody would go there. You're absolutely right. Don't you find that John Flann looks a little like Robert Redford? He does. He looks like a CGI Robert Redford cartoon. Absolutely the case. They're not identical, but you bet you'll see the resemblance right away. So, it'll say he looks like a Canadian Robert Redford, not because of anything in particular about, whatever. I don't know what it exactly means. It's just that we've already got one. So maybe you want one too, but he moved to Virginia. So that's the answer. Very, very true. Take a look. I encourage you to do it. And you'll probably reach the same conclusion. All right, that wasn't where I meant to go. Now, a lot of chatter, the bulk of the chatter on Twitter today about the Supreme Court decision. I don't find it surprising. I don't find it even particularly alarming, really, at this point, because I think New York is just going to come back with a different rule. But maybe we can dive a little bit into what happened here and what the decision was. Armando probably has had a look at this thing and has something to say on the subject. By the way, if you happen to be listening live and you want to chime in, go ahead. Or if you want to chime in for Friday's show, certainly welcome to do that. We'll be looking to mix it up a little bit tomorrow. But, it is as has been reported. I guess the simplest way of laying it out, just the facts of it, I guess it's already been done. The Hill usually is good for, you want to give me a brief overview of exactly what happened here. Supreme Court blocks New York coronavirus restrictions on houses of worship. And I guess the meaningful part of the New York rule for the 5 justices in the majority was that they make specific mention of rules for houses of worship, and that's I guess what they hung their hat on and said you're singling out houses of worship for some kind of different sort of treatment. And, I guess really probably all New York has to do at this point is come back and say, all right, all indoor gatherings, regardless of why you're gathering, are limited to X number. I think New York was thinking that they were trying to do people a favor by specifically addressing houses of worship, because a lot of people just sort of think they're exempt because, First Amendment considerations, or just you would never get in the way of my religion. And so therefore, indoor gathering restrictions don't apply to religious organizations, but they do, and they can. And I guess if they come back with a non-discriminatory rule, the Supreme Court will have to come up with some other equally stupid objection. And a lot of people commenting that their objections were taken apart in the dissent filed by Sotomayor. Anyway, the Hill's brief overview of things says the Supreme Court late on Wednesday sided with religious challengers to New York State's latest coronavirus pandemic-related restrictions. 5-4 ruling. Court barred New York authorities from enforcing some limits on the number of people attending services in churches and synagogues in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. Ruling highlighted the court's recent rightward shift with Amy COVID Barrett. I love that nickname that I saw someone give her. Sided with 4 other conservative justices. You can guess who they are. Chief Justice John Roberts went the other way, joining 3 liberal judges in dissent. The ruling marked a shift for the court, as earlier this year, before the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it ruled 5-4 on similar cases out of Nevada and California. And by the way, the pronunciation of Nevada now up in the air again, as people point out. Well, of course, the correct pronunciation really should be based on the Spanish name for the state, and we should be saying Nevada, as I always used to do. And I like to give the local pronunciations where possible, and that one was an easy one to come to understand. But they were pointing out, why should we pronounce it as Nevada in deference to the white settler population there that doesn't, that purposefully doesn't want to learn to speak and will purposefully mangle Spanish pronunciation. Maybe that's something to reevaluate. It'd certainly be an easy transition for me. Anyway, right. So they ruled 5-4 the other way when Ginsburg was there on cases out of Nevada, and California. Barrett was quickly confirmed, of course, to the bench following Ginsburg's death in September. I also happened to see news the other day. Maybe I can make a note to myself to find it. But Mitch McConnell apparently very brazenly suggested Amy COVID Barrett for that seat the very night that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death was announced. So, he kept it quiet, which is what you should be trying to do. That'd be, shameful to be out there doing right away. You want to give some decent interval, but apparently he didn't. And so that story has leaked. I'll see if we can't find that mentioned somewhere. Anyway, in the unsigned majority opinion, the majority ruled for the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn and the Agudath Israel of America, who I guess is that a Hasidic or Hasidic Jewish organization, or maybe a temple. Who argued that New York's caps on the number of people who could attend services in designated coronavirus hotspots violated the free exercise clause of the First Amendment due to the orders being more restrictive than on other facilities. Interesting. So yes, I think probably a neutral regulation that limits numbers indoors across the board you would ordinarily think would survive, and maybe it would. Maybe they'd be fine with that. But there is good reason why you would have a different standard. Different things go on in houses of worship than go on elsewhere. And as I understood things from my brief skimming of the things I set aside on this case, the reasoning of the majority in this one was, why is it okay to, go out shopping for, even for non-necessities and shop indoors, and there's no restriction there, but a restriction on religious services? Well, because, when you go shopping for anything, I think they used the example of going shopping for a bike. You might spend more time inside a store shopping for a bike than you do, say, picking up groceries or just 1 or 2 items from a convenience store. True. But in religious gatherings, you tend to stay there for quite a long time and sit in fairly close proximity to others. And even if you socially distance, it's all about outdoor or indoor gatherings that go for an hour or more and involve, talking and singing in many cases, and a lot of times unmasked at that. And, it's high-risk activity. But whatever. Okay, in court papers, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo had argued that restrictions on houses of worship were necessary in order to stem the surge of coronavirus cases in the state. Lower courts had sided with New York in the case. Neil Gorsuch wrote of his ruling that it seemed, here it is, contradictory to say it was unsafe to go to church but not to shop for a new bike. So, at least according to the governor, he says, it may be unsafe to go to church, but it is always fine to pick up another bottle of wine, shop for a new bike, Gorsuch wrote. And, the answer is it's different in kind. So, maybe it will be different and ought to be treated differently. I have a few other things I put aside in pocket on the case that I thought were worth, people who are often worth taking a look at their reaction. Steve Vladek being one of them, University of Texas law professor, tweeting, when the history of this era of the Supreme Court is written, we may look back at last night's rulings as the fountainhead of a massive shift in how a majority of the court approaches religious liberty, specifically, and government regulation in general. It really is a huge deal. We can't tell for sure yet, but maybe it will be a huge deal. Steve Vladek further includes his own tweet on the case, saying, by 5-4 votes with Justice Barrett in the majority and the chief dissenting, SCOTUS has enjoined New York's limits in on-person religious services pending appeals by Catholic and Jewish houses of worship. And he includes some screenshots of Justice Sotomayor's dissent, which he says gets right to the point. But as all dissents are, as all Supreme Court documents are, fairly wordy, but let's read through it. Sotomayor, with whom Justice Kagan joins in dissenting, says the following: amidst a pandemic that has already claimed over 250,000 American lives, the court today enjoins one of New York's public health measures aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19 in areas facing the most severe outbreaks earlier this year. So, there's a real reason for the extra restrictions stated. It's happening in the area with the most severe outbreaks. Earlier this year, this court twice stayed its hand when asked to issue similar extraordinary relief. See South Bay United Pentecostal Church versus Newsom, that would be the California case, and Calvary Chapel Dayton Valley versus Sisolak. I guess that would be our Nevada case. I see no justification for the court's change of heart, and I fear that granting applications such as this one, filed by the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn, will only exacerbate the nation's suffering. South Bay and Calvary Chapel provided a clear and workable rule to state officials seeking to control the spread of COVID-19. They may restrict attendance at houses of worship so long as comparable secular institutions face restrictions that are at least equally as strict. And that makes some sense. New York's safety measures fall comfortably within those bounds. She has no problem with it under those rules. Like the states in South Bay and Calvary Chapel, New York applies similar or more severe restrictions to comparable secular gatherings, including lectures, concerts, movie showings, spectator sports, and theatrical performances where large groups of people gather in close proximity for extended periods of time. Likewise, New York treats more leniently only dissimilar activities, such as operating grocery stores, banks, and laundromats in which people neither congregate in large groups nor remain in close proximity for extended periods. That should be enough to decide the case, yes. The diocese attempts to get around South Bay and Calvary Chapel by disputing New York's conclusion that attending religious services poses greater risks than, for instance, shopping at big box stores. But the district court rejected that argument as unsupported by the factual record. Undeterred, Justice Gorsuch offers up his own examples of secular activities that he thinks might pose similar risks as religious gatherings, but which are treated more leniently under New York's rules, e.g. going to the liquor store or getting a bike repaired. But Justice Gorsuch does not even try to square his examples with the conditions medical experts tell us facilitate the spread of COVID-19. large groups of people gathering, speaking, and singing in close proximity indoors for extended periods of time. So, yeah, kind of does get straight to the point. There's a little bit more here. Unlike religious services, which have every one of those risk factors, bike repair shops and liquor stores generally do not feature customers gathering inside to sing and speak together for an hour or more at a time, especially if it's just a repair place. Justices of this court play a deadly game in second-guessing the expert judgment of health officials about the environments in which a contagious virus, now infecting 1 million Americans each week, spreads most easily. In truth, this case is easier than South Bay and Calvary Chapel. While the state regulations in those cases generally applied the same rules to houses of worship and secular institutions where people congregate in large groups, New York treats houses of worship far more favorably than their secular comparators. Let's see. Yes, notes from the Calvary Chapel case include from Kavanaugh's dissent here, noting that Nevada subjected movie theaters and houses of worship alike to a 50-person cap. And let's see, in the other brief here, requiring movie theaters, concert venues, and sporting arenas to subject to New York's regulations to close entirely, but allowing houses of worship to open subject to capacity restrictions. And whereas the restrictions in South Bay and Calvary Chapel applied statewide, New York's fixed capacity restrictions apply only in specifically designated areas experiencing a surge in COVID-19 cases. The diocese suggests that because New York's regulation singles out houses of worship by name, it cannot be neutral with respect to the practice of religion. Thus, the argument goes, the regulation must, ipso facto, be subject to strict scrutiny. That would be the standard of review. Remember when we were talking about Rudy Giuliani not being able to answer the question of what standard of review should the court apply? I don't know, the regular one? Strict scrutiny is one among the options. It is true that New York's policy refers to religion on its face, but as I have just explained, that is because the policy singles out religious institutions for preferential treatment. There you go, treatment, in comparison to secular gatherings, not because it discriminates against them. So they got that completely backwards. Surely the diocese cannot demand laxer restrictions by pointing out that it's already being treated better than comparable secular institutions. What if they do and 5 justices say they are? It's fine. Well, we'll find out, I guess. Finally, the diocese points to certain statements by Governor Cuomo as evidence that New York's regulation is impermissibly targeted at religious activity, specifically at combating heightened rates of positive COVID-19 cases among New York's Orthodox Jewish community. The diocese suggests that these comments supply an independent basis for the application of strict scrutiny. I do not see how. The governor's comments simply do not warrant an application of strict scrutiny under this court's precedents. Just a few terms ago, this court declined to apply heightened scrutiny to a presidential proclamation limiting immigration from Muslim-majority countries, even though President Trump had described the proclamation as a Muslim ban, originally conceived of as a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on. You'll remember that. Anyway, that's the end of the excerpts that are provided here. Strict scrutiny, you might have guessed, is the most difficult standard here to overcome. The test basically being, we have to really scrub through this thing and take a good hard look at what are the objectives and do they justify the abrogation of what might otherwise be understood as secured rights under the Bill of Rights or elsewhere in the Constitution. But those rights not being absolute, of course, fire in a crowded theater, etc., right? Public safety measures can sometimes be used to overcome or defeat what would otherwise be considered a constitutional right. But it will require, like they say, strict scrutiny of it. Are you sure? Are you absolutely positive that this is necessary? And does this do this in the most narrow possible way? But what Sotomayor is saying is that's not even necessarily the standard of review here. It just could be like is this a reasonable imposition here? And in the case of a pandemic, it might very well be. All right, taking our last break and going into the last segment is the order of business that's up next. I happened to grab something from Brian Beutler on the subject of this case too, and I can scan it during the 2 minutes and see whether we all benefit by bringing it up or moving on to other subjects like the misspellings and the filings from Sidney Powell, etc., etc. We'll find out after this. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Roots Radio. All right, yes, I do want to at least read Brian Beutler's comment on it. He actually is responding to Steve Vladek's tweet thread about this and just commenting on the strength of the dissent here. So a pretty quick hit. He's just saying, here's a glimpse into a very long future. A dissent so irrefutable, the majority should be embarrassed. I think so. But the majority has 5 votes, even without John Roberts, and they will lift a collective middle finger at suffering Americans and those trying to make things better. And yeah, I mean, I guess we're going to kind of be stuck with, it doesn't matter that other position makes the most sense. We like religious institutions, and we're going to rule in favor of them if they ask us to. There's a further comment here. New York should vindicate both public health and its own legitimate power over the corrupt court by reissuing regulations to apply generally across comparable gathering places, stripping houses of worship of the favorable treatment the Gorsuch Five used as the pretext to wage deadly culture war. Yeah, and that's a great conclusion, and exactly the conclusion that they should reach. And basically, it's the opportunity to say, all right, well, if you're going to ignore all the facts, then I guess they don't matter. But the facts here are that religious institutions got favorable treatment under New York rules, but because they were singled out for more favorable treatment, you think the fact that they were singled out is prima facie evidence of discrimination against them, despite the fact that it's right in front of you, the regulations are more lenient in most places, except in the areas where there are the most severe outbreaks. So, all right, in order to make things fair and even across the board, which is apparently this very wise court's insistence that it be the case, fine. The occupancy restrictions will be applied across the board, and there will be no favorable treatment for houses of worship in the most of New York State. By the same token, there will be no more restrictive regulations for the places that are having the hardest time dealing with COVID-19. But since they insisted, those very communities that are having the hardest time with COVID-19 insisted that the restrictions be placed across the board, well, fine. That's what we'll do. Now, it may come down that the even more restrictive maybe the restrictions that they were looking to place on hot spots will just be applied to everybody across the board, even if you're not a hot spot. And we'll see whether that one survives. Or we'll take slightly more lax approach and say The statewide restrictions remain in place. They'll remain in place for everybody, including religious institutions, including the ones in hot spots, and the people who attend those religious institutions will get sick and die at a greater pace. And we hope that they don't spread the illness to the rest of the community. But in the case of an insular community like some of these places, maybe it won't spread quite so much. I don't know. No, it's too bad. I was kind of hoping, too, that the Hasidic Jewish community would respond differently to this, but I guess they didn't. Maybe one thing that they could do to increase their social distancing is they could increase the size of their gigantic fur hats that they wear. That in Temple, maybe that would help. And if you could just make the brims of those things 3 feet wide, well, the fact that you're wearing a hat that's 6 feet in diameter at the brim would help keep people apart that way. I don't know. They could give that a shot. By the way, before moving on to other subjects, I will note there was one other observation that had scrolled down my page but by the time I saw Brian Monroe's. But Eve N., listening along, says, yeah, John Flannery does look like Robert Redford, and I think he knows it. I think that's true. I don't know. Eve, are you listening, or did you happen to just see the retweet go by? I don't know. I can't tell for sure that you're listening. But anyway, if you are, I wanted to credit Eve with getting the observation in under the wire, beating out Brian Monroe, who gets plenty of airtime as it is. So thanks, Eve, for making that, sending us that note. Absolutely true. And let's see. Oh, Rebecca Roman's also saying, giving thanks for a great live show from me and Greg. That's good news. I didn't realize anyone would rate it as great. Looking forward to maybe a tomorrow show. Okay, I'm sure you would like to have that too. But also passing us this note that Wonkat calls Amy Coney Barrett Amy Comet Ping Pong. That's also appropriate and funny. I'll take that one as well. Let's see. All right. Let's see other items up for discussion today. One of the things actually I considered doing with part of the day anyway today, even though there's so much news to get to, because it's Thanksgiving, I thought an excellent suggestion made to me a while back, once we realized that we would have to be doing some additional fundraising appeals here for the Kagro in the Morning show, is somebody said, well, maybe you could spend some time thanking donors as they come in, and everyone loves to have their name called. Not everyone likes to have their name called out on the air necessarily, and I hope we don't embarrass anybody by calling them out, but I thought maybe it would be a good time once in a while to say thanks to the people it's particularly easy to do for those who give via Patreon, mostly because the platform makes it easy to display everybody's names, or at least the names that they signed up for Patreon under, and read them off that way. Some of the other platforms make it a little more difficult to find the names of everybody who's contributing that way. And, of course, there are others who contribute in more traditional ways, but which are now increasingly non-traditional because you're doing things like writing checks and mailing them. And that we appreciate that, and we appreciate the patronage for the Postal Service. That's true, but it doesn't give me the easiest way of compiling all the names. But so realizing that we probably won't get to everybody, I thought, would you like to have me read the names? It's a good time to be thankful for the support of people who came in, let's say, starting with those via Patreon, including right up at the top of the list here, our good friend Gil Aquino, who does correspond with us here on the show fairly frequently, and has been thinking about sending a recorded segment sometime soon. When you're healthy and up to it, Gil, please go ahead. And you might know him on Twitter and elsewhere by his handle of how do we pronounce this one out loud? He's changed it a little bit so that we can say it, but it makes it difficult. But Treble, how does he say? Trebligol. How does he say it? I can't say it. Trebligoniqua. How about that? And he's pointed out to me it's almost his name backwards, but he allegedly switched around some of the letters in order to make it slightly easier to pronounce, but it didn't work for me. But anyway, the originator, you may know him better as the originator of our adopted moniker for the Latiñes community. One of his ideas and something that he wrote up some time ago at Daily Kos. But others with more easily pronounceable names, but equally anonymous sort of types of names, like Mike D, who just, giving us his last initial will work just fine. Let's see. We got John Dowse. Oh, Eve has chimed in here, by the way. I'm here for the LOLs, as the kids might possibly still say, and the learning. Okay, excellent. Yes, okay. Another note here from our friend Ride the Curve on Twitter, saying, just a pronunciation FYI, Latinas pronounce Latina and Latines. Yeah, I'm still a little bit puzzled about this. Maybe Gil can clear this up. This is twice people have said, yeah, it's not a nye sound, except that when Gil sent me the article that he wrote, he actually quite clearly did use the enye in spelling this thing. So I've been giving it that pronunciation. However, I have seen that there are other people who have adopted similar spellings but use just a regular N, not the enye with the tilde over it. And so maybe that's what's going on. Others are just spelling it Latine, Latines, etc. And I would pronounce it that way without the tilde, but Gilbert was the first to show me this thing, and it had the tilde, so I went with that. And now that I see other people are using it too, I don't know. And that might be a concession. Gil's easygoing guy. He might make that concession and say, all right, if it's getting out there more without the tilde, we'll go with Latine, Latina, or Latine, Latines instead. I'm not arguing about it. It's just that I don't know. I feel like, if it has the tilde, I got to say it, right? Okay. Let's see. Where do we leave off? I'm never going to get through this. So Gil, Mike, thank you very much. Mike D, John Dowse. These are some of our earlier adopters of Patreon. I think I have them displayed here in chronological order of joining. So Gil, I think we're maybe the first one on board with our Patreon format. If unless they're lying to me somehow, it's always possible. Let's see. Others, I'm going to have to scroll over because their names are very long. Nathan Broadus and Ernie Polstein. Are you all still listening? I hope so. Are you thrilled to have your names being called out or embarrassed? I guess we could do something about that. Christina Nowacki as well. One of our early adopters. Judy Vincent, also a good friend of the show. Here's some initials. EMB. MB. You've grouped your initials in a way that makes me say, do you like to be referred to as M? Or EMB, or do you actually never go by that, but you signed up for Patreon that way in case I ever read your name out loud to thank you for contributing to the show. And all right, well, everyone can send me their notes on all of that and how you wish to be thanked in the future. Wendy Knoll, Roger Hake, Mary Mendonca. Is that right? Mendonca. Mendonca. Thank you, Mary. I should probably maybe this is a futile gesture, right? I'm thanking you and then I pronounce your name wrong. How bad is that? Jesse Broll, Kate Sherrill, here you are in the Patreon. Jesse Brodkin, Linda Chapman, lots of people whose names I recognize from Twitter. Mark Hogue, and frequent contributors to the show. Let's see. Philip Biederbeck, Jody Evans, Larry Fennis, James Hooper, Just Leah, she goes by one name like Cher does. Alice Blair, Wendell Stone, Wesley Blickenstaff, Nick Laughlin, Bobby Wilson, Laura Candidai, is that right? I'm sure I've ruined that one, but thank you very much for your support. This is tough to do. Let's see. John Pontowski, Linus Hart, Mary Hill, Henry Frank, Tim Burnett, Rex Clark, Marilyn Montgomery, Sue Resina, I hope I'm giving you the right pronunciation there, too. Christopher Fry, Matthew Rigdon, lots of people whose names I recognize. There's Rebecca Romans. Hi, Rebecca. Let's see. Satyan Sundaram. I hope I haven't ruined that one too much. Deborah Gordon. T. Wilson, just a simple T, if you please. Patricia Rail. Matthew Haichi. Norma Zuckerman. Lisa Iannucci. Hi, Lisa. I recognize that name from Twitter as well. Susan Barrett Price. Marilyn Sandler. Lincoln Rickwood. Adam Young. And Elliot Woodrich. Just page 1 of 4 of our long list of Patreon supporters. Thank you, each and every one of you. You've been longtime supporters. Those of you who are new to supporting the show, absolutely. I can't express my appreciation enough. There's simply no way that we could justify continuing to do the show without your support. It also allows me at least to give a token of support to Scott when he puts our summaries together, and I apologize that I might impose on him once again, Scott Anderson, to come to my rescue and do a show summary on Thanksgiving. We'll talk about it later. If you're busy, let me know. I can handle it. It'll be okay. Don't worry. But lots of people involved in making sure that the show can go forward. I could tell you even more of them, as a matter of fact. Maybe I'll break it up just a little bit. Or maybe it's a good final Thanksgiving segment after all. And besides, if we're going to come back tomorrow, we can cover all those stories tomorrow. Let's see. And I'll try my best. What I'm doing, I'm going to just read the names as you've entered them into Patreon. Again, I suppose it wasn't not entirely fair. You didn't know that it was going to be read on the air. But if anybody's got any suggestions either about pronunciation or please don't read my name again or something like that, please let me know. Hey, use the email. Feel free to do that. kagrox@gmail.com. We'll get you through. And I suppose I would comfort you this way by saying it's not exactly wide release. You know, that we're going to thank you within a circle of friends who are listening to the show and the podcast. And so not a bad thing. And if you've given a fake name just on Patreon just for fun, because who the hell cares, and you would prefer that I give you more appropriate recognition, please let me know about that as well. For instance, Richard B., let's say you wanted to tell us what your full last name was and you wanted everybody to know, you could go ahead and let me know. Let's see. Andrew Grossman, also on the list here. Nick Dempsey Clot. Is that right? Okay, good. This is kind of small type that everything pops up. And if your name is longer, of course, I get an ellipsis at the end of this. And I don't get everybody's full name displayed all the time. Garth Strom. Oh, look at this one. There's a nice a hybrid name here of Rorbs. So, I think Rorbs, you know who you are. And let us know if you want more recognition than that. But thank you as well. Taylor Stone, Gail Radford, Robert Hudson, Annette Wong. Does everybody recognize themselves or perhaps some other friends in the audience here giving a support to the show? Dale Waterstreet. Hey, look at this. Even a contribution from Netroots Radio itself. How about that? That seems almost unnecessary. But I suppose in return for all the mentions that they get in every one of our returns from our breaks, it makes some sense. Thank you, guys. Heidi Jett, Thomas Lang, Eric Posman. There he is. David Littlefield, another one-name person here. Sumiko. I would go with that, too. That's a very interesting and unique name. Let's see. Brett Virginia Kensington. A nice long name there. Stephen C. Albert Titus, who we hear from time to time via Twitter on the live show. Joe Coral. How do you pronounce it, Joe? Corral. Noreen Hananoki, another interesting and tripping name off the tongue here. Robert Perry, Julie Lapano, Val Jostock, Sven Larson, Patricia Elliott, Jason Martin, John Anderson, Mark Anderson, the Andersons chiming in here at the same time. John Rodia, David Gilligan, D.L. Melroy, Daniel Lawson, Michael Cruz. Have I got that right? Cruz, I'm sorry. The type being so small. Is that an I or an L? Michael Cruz. Dawn Loges. Oh, my goodness. I hope I haven't got that one wrong. Alicia Rasley. Annette and Brian. That's pretty easy. Don't tell us. Annette and Brian who? Well, there's only one Annette and Brian combination, I would venture to guess, in our audience. Thank you very much. Torek Ward. Joshua Martin. Donna Raitanen. Hope I'm getting these right. Neil Snyder. Andrew Schmidt. Look at this. A nice, fun, made-up name, just as odd as Kagro X, right? Corn Coffee with K's. Corn Coffee. James Parenti. Kennedy, come on, last name. Kennedy Connor. Lauren Moriarty. Sally Fry. Alice Halstead. John Cogwell. And, hey, it's Darwin Messidew. Good morning, Darwin. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you, all of you. Please feel free, by the way, of course, make yourself more familiar to the audience in addition to by being a supporter for whom we thank for the financial support. Feel free to make yourself more familiar to the audience by commenting via Twitter or email during the show or after the show so that we can chime in at some point with your comments. Adding a recorded segment, let people hear your voice. It's always a fun thing to do. And I love it, of course, for a number of reasons. I might as well continue on here. Robert Muther, it's M-U-E-T-H-E-R, Muther, like makes me think of Mueller. So we say, hope we got that close to correct. Jason Altman, another fun name here. Cali Zephyr, like Cali like California, Zephyr. Edward Paulino. Renata Riff. Renata, you just sent me an email just the other day, and I have put it aside, too, and now I can't bring it to mind offhand what you were commenting on, but let's see if I can't add that to the... Maybe we can do that right away. Can I get to that? Was it an email, or was it from one of the other messaging... yes. Yeah, let me just grab that because it was good information from one of the shows just the other day. Renata just sent a note the other day talking about when we were talking about the caning of Sumner, Charles Sumner, right? The senator from Massachusetts. We were talking about various violent incidents that happened on the chamber floors. And we were saying, okay, well, remember that was a caning and there was no gun involved. This was when we were talking about the Q loons who want to carry their guns on the House floor. Well, there was a gun involved. Check it out. Representative Lawrence Kite. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly or not, but he's dead, so there's nothing we can do about it. K-E-I-T-T. Anyone know how to pronounce that name? Representative Lawrence Kite prevented the intervention of other senators. Like if you were wondering, why didn't anybody beat the crap out of, what's his name? I already forgot. And it's too bad. I have the name. I actually know the name, too. All right. Well, I've forgotten it. I've blanked out. And yesterday, the day when we were talking about it, I had it at the tip of my tongue, too. And I remember Preston Brooks. That's it. All right. Well, anyway, why didn't anybody say, hey, let's kick the crap out of Preston Brooks, or take his cane away, or jump in here and hit him with a desk or something? Well, apparently it was because of Lawrence Kite, or Kate, or whoever he is, preventing the intervention of other senators by brandishing a pistol and a cane of his own as well. So yes, there is an instance of an elected official here in the United States Congress pulling a gun in the Senate chamber in order to prevent the intervention in the caning of Sumner. So how about that for a historical note from Renata? Thanks, and also thanks for your support. Back to where we were a minute ago. Mark Scher, thank you for your support as well. Gary Oliver, every one of you. Russell, another team. Russell and Christine Katz. Kelly. Just Kelly. And thank you, Kelly. And I think I know which Kelly we're talking about, too. But the name says Kelly, and that's all I'm going to give you. Martin, oh my, look at this. Verilist. Oh my, I'm sorry, I ruined that one. Martin, thank you very much. And thanks for giving me this embarrassing moment. It was well worth your money, I think, don't you? Sally, just Sally, easier to pronounce that way. Laura Holmbeck. Gib Primo, Peter Ketchbill, thanks too. Oh, my goodness. I think again. It's Pete Ketchbill. I think I know. I had no idea. Pete, are you listening live? Pete Ketchbill from Lafayette? Really? I mean, I don't know how many there are running around, but maybe you could tell me. I had no idea. How exciting is that? All right, Bruce McFarland, of course, who we hear from frequently on Twitter, and we add his comments to the mix all the time. Stephen Brown, Dr. the Frog. How do you like that? Is that the new honorific title for Kermit the Frog, I suppose? You know who you are, and reveal yourself to us sometime. Jocelyn Bramble, Dennis DeClaudio, who I see all the time on Twitter as well. Seneca Menard, Patrick Snyder, John Schaff, Karen Matthews, John Atwood, Harry Cross, Ellen Byer, Jessica Campbell, Pat Duvall, Joseph Gannon, Ingrid Van Eckert, Jim Tobias, Jeremy Freiberger, Raymond Archambault, Lucy Edwards, Kim Garnett, Julian Hayhurst. There are a lot of you. Did you know this? Phil Mitchell, John Langan, all initials RJS, Linda Hardesty, Martin Brooks, hello, Susan Akamine, have I got that right? A-K-A-M-I-N-E, A-K-A something else if I pronounced it wrong. It's tough work to do this all at once here, but Edwin Butterfield, but that just goes to show how many of you there really are here. Leslie Weidman, and let's see, Lisa Ryan, Cheryl Grossman, Michael Maholtz, let's say I'm going to say Mayholtz, Michael Mayholtz, John, without the H, is it John Flann? No, I don't think so, but someone who goes by Jon, John, and that's it. Michelle Roberts and Peter Schuyler. There is another page of folks. These would be some of our newer sponsors, and let's just keep going with it right up to the end of the show, shall we? Mike Lefebvre, Juliana Grant, Mark Francis, Robert Hartle, Carol Losi, Catherine Buchanan, Lois Epstein, Martha Johnston, Irving Katz, Ed Butterfield, Matthew Kazasas, I hope I got that one right, Timothy Lapham, Kevin Weber, Ellen Kurt, just the first initial here, E. Crumbs, Chris Cammers, Mary Hickling, another first initial, R. Collins, Kim Chadwick, Russell, not Russell Stover, good candies, but Russell Stouffer, and a nickname here, I guess, right on the front of the name here, Swami Goodman, though I just had some correspondence with him, Andrew, his first name, but I'd be interested to know about the nickname, I suppose, Swami. Hey, and is this our Twitter friend, Monica Chiramonte, Eric Manning, and Alan Bolton. Not John, but Alan. Thank you. See if you can get John on board too. Alan, why not? Or Michael, for that matter. We'll take him as well. I appreciate it, each and every one of you. I've spent the last segment saying so and calling the names out, and I think maybe we can try and make it a practice, perhaps, that we call these names out as they join us as sponsors, and we can welcome them into the community, and I can thank them that way directly for their support. I truly appreciate it. Again, I can't tell you how much it means to me to have that many people to have to go through, to thank. A great day to do it. And, of course, with the family around, they can get a sense of how many people are, in fact, putting their money, I guess their money where my mouth is I suppose what's actually going on here. But for those inside the house wondering, why would you do this on a holiday? Why wouldn't you take a break? How many people are there really out there who really feel like, yeah, I would need a show today, tomorrow, some other holiday just to keep me company? Could it really be that important? And I guess the answer is yes. And I really appreciate the fact that you give me a chance to do this, and that you make it possible to continue to do. We'll be doing more in terms of trying to drum up more business in this way and more support so that we can continue to go forward. But yeah, there's really, when it comes down to the bottom line here, why do you spend your days doing this show instead of going out and, I don't know, be a Walmart greeter or something else that would be even more lucrative, for instance? Well, one day, it may come to pass that it's no longer possible to continue to do it, but we hope that day doesn't come anytime soon. Rebecca Romans chimes in here with a good suggestion via Twitter. Please consider donating to keep the Kagro in the Morning Show on the air. I've been a donor, she says, since Recurrency, remember them? And I get a good feeling every time I hear the show. David works hard to bring us a quality show 5 days a week, and he deserves our support. I couldn't agree more, except I will really, really try to agree more and find some way to get the rest of you to agree as well. I know times are tough, it's true, and I know a lot of us just gave away all of our spare cash to the elections and maybe even to the Georgia runoffs as well. I'll make a as principled an appeal as I can to you, and probably update the messages at some point that play in our podcast as well, just to give you, if that will give you incentive to join us as a donor, that would be great. And then perhaps tomorrow we can get around to thanking all the people who give via PayPal and other non-Patreon means.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, if you're thankful for having your name read, that would be good. And if you're thankful for the fact that Netroots Radio brings you another fantastic show following us, of course, I speak of the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. You can thank your lucky stars that he comes up to bat cleanup after our last segment. Stay tuned for more news.